Hey, and welcome to Casual Vibers. I'm back with another episode of learning more about code environments and how we can benefit from the most open source offerings that we can have at our disposal. I'm going to just go faster and with a short video about the top 5 VS Code in extensions that has benefited me a lot and I wanted to share with you. So without any further delay, let's get into it. As the title suggests, this is basically to transform and prepare the VS Code environment as a scientific workbench for exercising and testing and experimenting with the code and algorithms and data. It is not for production. It is more for data, basically wrangling and then experimenting with data and code that you already have. So let's get onto it. What we're going to cover today is first the packages that VS Code offers for Python and Jupyter. Then, because like many of us already work with MATLAB, I'm going to cover MATLAB Extension as well. Then we have Data Wrangler, which is like an extension for Python, but it shows the data in a much more intuitive way. Then we're going to go to a grammar checking package called LTeX. And from that, we're going to actually switch to LaTeX and the environment and we're going to see how nicely LaTeX Workshop can help us to just write our reports or our papers inside VS Code with ease. We have a very performant spell checking and grammar checking in even our LaTeX as well. And as a bonus, we're going to talk about GitLens, which is another sub extension for VS Code offered by Microsoft. I hope that this is going to pack into 20 minutes, and I made sure that all of them have the latest updates as well that you can look at. And why this is important for us is because a VS Code inherently is just an IDE. So it is just an interface. It is pretty neutral. It doesn't have any Python built in or MATLAB built in or any other language. And therefore, for making most out of it, you would need to make basically like extensions work for you. This is exactly like making this general purpose editor into a scientific workbench, which is our use case, making sure that Python, MATLAB, LaTeX, R or other languages, Julia is working perfectly, and then making sure that we know and we can explore the data and also the code in an easy way that it is not hindering our process and our algorithms. Instead, it is helping us making it faster. Make sure that when you want to have extensions, basically you can press Control-Shift-X. So I'm going to just show this to you here. Let me create a new one, Command-Shift-N. So having a VS Code and then Command-Shift-X goes to the extensions, which is here. And then you can basically start working from that and work through and install extensions that you want. Okay, so the first one that we're going to talk about is Python and Jupyter. And basically it is one of the most basic and the first thing that you might need to download and install if you're using Python. This is a package of four different extensions. Basically, you can see it by searching about Python in Visual Studio Code. You will see this web page, and it has a good description for it. But interestingly, like basically, you can see that there is like 4 packages. One is Python, the other is Pylance. Pylance basically replaced Microsoft IntelliCode. This is code completion for Python, and then there's Jupyter and Python Debugger. All of them work as a package, and I think you can install it as a package as well. So if I type here Python, for example, you can see that there's Python and then Python and Pylance and Python environments. But I believe that you can find also like the Python package installed here. So it says like it would say Python extension pack, and it would this one is actually like from a person, but I think let's try. I'm not sure if there is a Python and then pack from Microsoft or not. I thought it is, but if it is not installed, probably you will find it. But in any case, usually like when you just type Python, the Python from Microsoft will come up. Here, the reason that it is not coming up for me, it is that I have it installed. So this is basically searching the marketplace. Otherwise, I have Python here with other stuff installed. The Python environments and other stuff is for switching between the environments, and it is actually like a pretty neat addition, but feel free not to use it for now. It's okay. And then you can basically start working on a single environment, and whenever you need more environments to use and to take advantage of, then probably that's the time for you to do that. What I'm going to really talk about on this Python and Jupyter extension is actually the way that it is designed for data science and for algorithm development, which is different from Pythonic way of making things work. Basically, Python has this way of having functions on top and then having a main function. And then when you call the main function, it goes and runs the main and then going back to calling the functions that were defined before. However, if you are familiar with how MATLAB scripts work, we usually write from up top, defining our variables or importing our variables and then running through in a procedural way from top to down. There is no main function. Basically, VS Code added this extension to Python. If you added a number sign before, which makes a comment, then it would basically change that to a code block or a section, very similar to MATLAB. And then basically what you can do is run section by section, very similar to MATLAB. And the way that it does it is it runs it in a Jupyter instance. So basically copy that portion of the code in a Jupyter notebook and runs it for you and show you the results. The advantages is very similar to MATLAB. It has variable explorers, and then you can do exactly what you can do in Jupyter notebooks. You can do the plots and you can import images or show images you can save. And the advantage compared to Jupyter notebooks is that if you have Copilot or if you have any code assistance, the section-wise writing is much easier for them, for now at least, compared to the writing of a Jupyter notebook, because Jupyter notebooks has other XML metadata that needs to be added. So let's demo it for a very simple data. So here I have a hands-on section data. I'm going to share that on GitHub, and then you can also use it and walk through with me working on this. This is basically a synthesized EMG data in this like CSV, and then I have a similar code for analyzing that with Python and MATLAB. And one thing before we start, VS Code natively supports rendering Markdown. So it is just, you can just, if you are in a Markdown, you just need to press F1 and then find this option, Markdown Open Preview or Open Locked Preview. And then when you press that, then basically like whatever is here, whatever is here basically is rendered in a format that is with proper heading and everything next to it. And you know that GitHub also renders that natively. So basically this is like it has a README. So I will put this up. You can see the overview of everything. But we were talking about Python. By the way, I probably should already. But if you single click on a file, it shows you in italicized a name up top. So it means that it is temporary, just you're looking as a preview. But if you double click on them, then it becomes like a normal face. And that's going to be sticky and permanent here until we close it. So this is basically a script to read this EMG file. And we can also try to open it. Here you can see, I'm going to talk about data Wrangler later, but this is like a 4-channel file with a time column, and that's it. So what I'm going to do is exactly like doing the same thing. You can see that there is a run cell and run below there. It comes here. It asks you for a kernel, basically means like just a Python or a Jupyter kernel that you should have installed. If you do not have that, then you need to install Anaconda, and then basically usually like Anaconda installation with Python comes standard with a Jupyter environment. So here I probably just use a one that I already have. I have a couple of them for different projects. So it says I selected kernel to run. So now I selected a kernel. So now I can run cell. You see that it is very similar to Jupyter. So markdowns are rendered as basically titles, and like the formats is preserved. And then if I run cell again, you can see that it runs from here to here before the next one. And you can see that with expanding this, with like pressing on this 3 dot, and you can see that it is like that. If you press Control Enter, it runs basically the section. If you have Control Shift Enter, then basically it goes to the next section. So runs it through, again, very similar to how Jupyter works. Sorry, for Mac it's Command Shift Enter. Oops. Or just Shift Enter. You can change these for your convenience however you want. So for Mac, at least for me, is Control Enter to run the cell and stop, and Shift Enter for run the cell and go move forward. So you can see I'm just running one by one. I loaded the CSV, then I plotted, and then I separated the number of the channels and found the frequency. These are basically every cell is just running and showing me the thing. Now I can plot it, and you can see that there is a plot here showing EMG channels, for example, and then the power spectral density computing it, and then plotting, for example. This is a synthesized signal. There is no meaning for them, but then you have this and you can explore it. Very similar to what you see in MATLAB. You can copy, save, whatever that you want with the images. This is pretty neat. And the other thing that probably is important is this part, that if you are in Jupyter, you can see all the variables. Also, you can use the data Wrangler to see the variables as well. Basically, if you want to just see the EMG channel 1, you can just open it and you can see the EMG channel 1. Similarly, I don't know, if you want to see the PSD array, you can explore that, and so on and so forth. This is the features I really like from Python and Jupyter extension, that basically you can explore the data. This is not ideal probably for production code, but at the same time, I think it is fine for exploring. And then when the exploring is done, you can basically move from this to your next section that is more production focused implementation. I'm gonna just do some things, and basically it's just saving some data for me. If you want to clear or restart, restarting means to just delete everything. You can see that it is deleted. For clearing this space, clear all, and then run below, and it just starts to run every section one by one. And you can see that there is like now save data, and then information. And then we're going to talk about how to make a report using the LaTeX Workshop. Okay, next is the MATLAB extension. The MATLAB extension is like very simple, and it is quite handy in some sense. Recently, they added debugging and then making terminal, like adding terminal completions to it. But overall is basically you can run scripts from VS Code, and the way that it runs is basically runs in the terminal. It doesn't give you the workspace, and you cannot run section by section. And I think that is one of the huge problems. But at the same time, you can debug. If you have a debug point, you can still make it as a debug, and then you can see the workspace actually. But another important point is that it has code completion, and also it has syntax highlighting. And I think that's the important part. But why it is important? Because like many of us have MATLAB as a standard code environment. And sometimes like we have MATLAB and Python and other things coming together. VS Code helps to make it unified, and then you can basically interact with one or the other. The other very important part is that right now Copilot and other AI assistant tools are integrated with VS Code, and with MATLAB extension, they at least can run in the terminal. And because they also monitor the terminal, they can actually see what is the results of that and see what is happening there. So I think those are the important points here. I'm not going to show debugging, but you can see if you have a MATLAB extension installed, then here is a MATLAB script. And let me close this so we do not get distracted by that. If you have MATLAB in your path, it will find it. If not, then you need to go on settings and then type MATLAB, and then basically find your MATLAB. Where is MATLAB path? Hopefully if it finds it in my machine path, it works. If it doesn't find it, then you need to point to the installed MATLAB under the binary bin folder that you have for your MATLAB, and then it will find it for you. But if you want to work on that, then you basically connect it to MATLAB, and it takes a time because it opens a connection here. I didn't have MATLAB open, but now it runs an instance of MATLAB in the background. And it is just like a MATLAB, how time consuming it is to turn it on. And now it is connected, so now I can run. If I run, let's see what happens exactly. So you can see that it is running. And you can see that there is basically, we cannot do anything out of like this part. The plots are exactly similar to what we have in MATLAB and what we have in Python. And it just plots as a separate images. And that's why you can save it as well. The problem with this is that with AI cannot see these images unless you save it here, which is like you can see I have here and then I have here. So we can basically compare them together if you want. One of them is MATLAB, one of them is Python. And and you can see that they're basically the same because they're the same algorithms and scripts, but just in two different languages. AI cannot see it unless you save it here, or if you can work on an MCP or use an MCP. I have an MCP here. So MATLAB MCP tools on GitHub. I think hopefully you can find it here. And basically you can use this MCP to make sure that your workspace sections and even the images can be seen. With AI can see those and can help running just sections. I'm going to talk about MCPs and specifically this MCP later in another video, but this is just basically bare minimum of what you can do with MATLAB is with this extension. And I think it is pretty cool still, and AI can help developing code in MATLAB as well for you when you are in this one. I want to say that MATLAB added a copilot to its native IDE, but at the same time, I was not successful in running it yet. So hopefully, like with a new release, it will be resolved. What we have seen before, and it is right now, I think, pretty obvious that why data Wrangler is very important, is this extension that comes basically pre-installed, but requires a Python kernel to run. By default, any spreadsheet, CSV, or XLS format tries to open it with data Wrangler. And you can see that by default, you basically see some important information, for example, the histogram of the data from before and after. So you can see that, and then probably you can even try to copy and paste or do averaging if you want to do that. The good thing is that it comes with also basic operations here. So you can see that there is data summary, so that you can have basically per column or per, if I select this, for example, if I selected EMG, you can see that there is the data type, what the data type is, like what are the basic statistics, and even like kurtosis and skewed. And so it is here. At the same time, you can add other stuff, and you can also ask Copilot to do stuff. If you have something like missing data, or you want to sphere the data or normalize the data, there are formulas that help you with that. Let's try, for example, like for this channel, scale by min max values. And you can see that now basically changed it to a normalized version. So there, instead of the min max of minus 0.08 and 0.03, now you have a 0 to 1 basically scaled version of the EMG channel 1. I want to discard it. It requires Python 3.8 and then also a Jupyter kernel. You can basically, it is good for visual exploration, making, opening CSV, Excel, Panda data frames, having a column statistics and visualization, doing sorting and filtering. And then you can also have some things like filtering rows and pivot columns and rows, or transform it and basically doing a transposing, and then converting the types like from float to integers and categorical, so on and so forth. And the good thing is, if you add some things and you remove nans or if you, for example, normalize, then you can copy the code. So it just creates the code scripts for you. So when you're done with your exploration, you have the script, so you can run it on other participants or other data as well. Again, it is very good for initial inspection. If you do not know how pandas clean the data, it has built-in cleaning, and then you can do quality checks, and then you get the basic scripts, and then you run it for yourself. Okay. So the next plugin or add-on extension that I think is actually one of my favorite ones is LTeX, and it is not just spell check, but it actually has a very robust grammar and spelling check. And the reason it is one of my favorites is that there is no online mode. It is not like Grammarly that you're exposed to the internet or require the internet. It is all handled locally, and it is far beyond just a simple spell check. And that is actually the advantage of that. There is an open source platform for grammar and spell check, which is called Language Tools. And this basically, LTeX is a integration of that. So it supports 20 plus languages. It has offline checking. So basically there's a local server on your that runs in the background of your machine, and that interfaces with LTeX and works off of that. Make sure that right now LTeX itself, the last commit on that is about from 2 years ago, while the community has a LTeX Plus that basically it has its own organization and is actively supported, and it is running, and we're going to look at it later. So try to have that, but it is the same basically mechanism and workspace, but just being continued. Again, like when I mentioned that, it is basically when you have LTeX running, it looks at the grammar, at the sentence description and style, and tries to, if there are basically jargons or things that are not optimal, if like there are colons that are not optimal, it tries to show that to you. So it can basically, you can manage that as well, and it provides suggestions. It works very well with LaTeX for sure, and with Markdown, plain text, also with in comment sections of Python, R, many languages. So it is very, very nice. The good thing with the server is that you can just download it on your machine, and it runs without any dependencies. It is self-contained. At the same time, it is really important to understand that basically, like it is on Mac, it is very easy. Again, you can just install Homebrew, and then from Homebrew, you can install the language server, the language tool, and it will run in the background. Nothing required, nothing more required. You can add your custom dictionaries at a user level or at a project level, and it will work on that. It understands, or you can add different scientific writing and scientific jargon to it, and it understands that. So why do we need this? The reason is, if you're not always online, and if you want something more than a spell checker, you need grammar checks, common mistakes for expressions and other stuff. Basically, if you want a grammar check better than Word, but that works for LaTeX or Markdown or a comment section, it understands many languages, and also it always stays on your device, then that's what LTeX is. Let's try something like here, and you can see how it is working for yourself. So I think we can try with the README that we have here. And so I hope that LTeX is running in here. I'm not sure, to be honest, but we can try. The Copilot's running and saying that this is the wrong word, but it is not LTeX running. So let me double check here if it is installed. I think it is not. So let's install it right now, because that's actually like really important. And you can see basically if it can download the engine behind the scene, it will start downloading. And that's like the engine that you are seeing here, that it is being downloaded. But if it doesn't, it says, hey, the download was not successful, and please download it locally. And that's actually pretty easy. Let me show you until like this downloads. This one. So if you go to the LTeX Plus on the GitHub page as well, let me try and find it. LTeX Plus, and then probably in here, you can see the page, and then there is an installation and usage. And there is a how to install and use, and then there is an offline installation. I believe if you look at it on the GitHub as well, and then search for brew, I thought that it is like there would be a brew install for it. Let me LTeX Plus language server brew. So no, not TextLab. This is like LTeX LS Plus. It is the language server for text, and it works basically like it just installs that server that was downloading here on here, and then it helps you running it. I think it is running usually, like if it runs, and if you're on README, it should show up in here. And let's see. Yeah, it is running. So you can see that here now it understands that this is like not correct. And if you press on the light bulb here, or Control and dot or Command dot for Mac, it shows what is the quick fix. For example, like it understand that this is like a variable, or if it is something that you want to add it to dictionary, just add it to dictionary. Like Matplotlib is something that is a special case, but it knows that Matplotlib is a dictionary, is a special case, but it should be with added M, with capital M. So it does that. And then analysis, again, use analysis, and you can run it very nicely here. And the good thing is, like, again, LTeX Plus is the one probably to follow, because it will be updated. LTeX, by the way, basically very few things is changing, especially for LaTeX and other stuff. So no worries if you install the LTeX as well. It's not a big deal. Okay, in the 5th extension, that is basically my official last one, although we have a small bonus as well, is the LaTeX Workshop. It is named Workshop, but it is not actually a workshop. It is just an extension. It is a very powerful extension, and probably like one of the most important ways to work locally. And together, probably you can imagine, together with LTeX is actually like very powerful, in my opinion, even more powerful than Overleaf. Overleaf has some integrations with Grammarly and other grammar-based spell checks. Many times it doesn't work correctly. It requires the internet. It sometimes like it slows down the Overleaf ecosystem, but this one is actually like built-in, works great, makes most of the corrections for obvious grammar problems and obvious spelling checks and issues. So that's why I think the combination of the LaTeX Workshop and LTeX is very nice. You can have a IDE in VS Code basically for LaTeX, and it works very nice. LaTeX Workshop, the newest versions, requires like the newest versions of VS Code, but this is like a very nice way of seeing like the PDF. We're gonna see it in the hands-on section, but basically whatever you write, you can, as soon as you build it, then or asynchronize it, basically you will see the render on the right, very similar to overleaf. As soon as saving, you will see the render. There is reload animations and other stuff, but if it is just like a simple one, you can see that it shows the paragraph that highlights the paragraph that you were working and what goes to that section precisely. It has actually IntelliSense, so when you are typing a command in LaTeX, it tries to predict what you are working towards. So that's actually very nice and very powerful for that. Also, it can pull from your bibliography. So when you have \cite and then try to cite something, it pulls the citations from the .bib and it makes sure that it is there and you can basically cite it. The other one is that you can use MathJax, and when you are just typing the mathematical formulas, it can show you a preview of that, and that's actually pretty nice. The other one is when you can do live share, and I'm going to just touch on this because this is also an extension or was built in VS Code. But then the good thing is that actually you can very nicely collaborate with people with live share, and it is very nice to do. Let's see how we can do this, and let's work on it. Actually here, I think from the results, we had an example, which is an EMG report in here. And let me try to build it. And for building, you can go to the text here. Text, when you add it, you can have a build text in here, and it tries to build. And then you can try the view LaTeX PDF, and it just runs it for you. You can see that it is created. For the command shortcuts, Command B or Control B builds, and the Command V basically shows the preview of this. And you can see that this is pretty nice. One thing that I wanted to show, when you double click on something, you see it highlights the other way. And then if you double click on here or something like here, usually it should go there. So shortcut, LaTeX Workshop, show on PDF. Okay, so if the shortcuts are problematic, so the default is Control Alt V or Command Option V. So if I'm here and then Command Option V, or let's do this. Yeah, it doesn't work exactly. It just opens a preview to the specific paragraph. So Command Option J, let's try that. Yes, so yeah, Command Option J works for that and highlights and gives you something. So let's try again. So if you click here, it just brings it up. But if you do double click here, it doesn't work because it is reserved for other stuff, for other commands. But here, if you do Command Option J, it just brings it up and show you like the abstract that we just were creating for this basic EMG. And then the problem here, it's not a problem, but you can see that LaTeX creates a lot of auxiliary files in the process of compiling to make the PDF. So if you want to delete that, you just do Command Option or Control Option and then or Control Alt or Command Option C, and it deletes the unrelated one. So what remains is a text file, which we had that, and then syntax.gz, and then the .pdf, which was created. I will put the link to a repository that hosts all of this data at the bottom, so you can load it and you can try it for yourself. One thing I wanted to show is this one. So hopefully you can see when you do hover over the equation, then it just renders what the equation looks like even before the PDF is created. So that's actually pretty neat, and I really like that feature. And that is from MathJax. Is just like another basically package that was integrated into LaTeX. One thing that I mentioned, it is a live share. So that's something I think that Overleaf has for collaborative working. So the thing that you can do is if you share this as a GitHub repository and then you give access to your collaborators to work on this, they can start working on it and then commit. And if it is completely asynchronously, when you start working on it, you pull the latest changes and then you start working. And if you happen to work at the same time, there's some overlap, then basically there will be some conflicts, but you can easily resolve with Git. So that's the big deal. But there's a scenario that you both are basically at the end of the Zoom calls, and then you want to just work together and you want to see like how things are working. And that's when live share comes in. So when you create a live share, basically it creates a collaborative session like this. And it says that you want to share this port and you allow it. There is a link here copied that basically anyone having this link can start working on this. And it can also work on a browser. Let's try it here. And it's actually pretty nice. Even in the browser, it really doesn't matter if you have a good internet, just ask it to be in the browser. You can sign in, so your name is there, or you can just do it anonymously. And you can say it casual fibers, for example, and it will start to join. It takes some time, especially when it's on the web, because it needs to start and spin up some servers. You need to accept it. It says casual fibers has joined, so accept. And when it starts installing some things, I can see that the casual fibers now is here. Basically, I'm here, and let me do this and then try and make it smaller so you can see it here. And you can see like wherever I go, I can add and edit everything or anything that I want. I think you might be used to having like the files on the left. I push it to the right because it's easier for me, but this is also very nice. So you can also run it because it is the same server. So I hope so, actually. If not, then you should try it. Text and then Command B. No. Command. Nope. Okay, so interesting that at least that right now it copied. Nope. Rotation. It should have copied the. It is not sharing. So we can try to investigate and see if, for example, like you can transfer the extensions on the VS Code here as well. But for sure, if you have basically like a local VS Code, like the one that I have here, and then you share and you have the other person also has the LaTeX Workshop installed as an extension, then basically they can see the preview on the right and they can build, because basically this workspace plus these files are shared between you and your coworker. And so then you can start working on it. Very similarly, it works. And also I can start making a discussion or add a comment. And yeah. So basically, like you will have some options to navigate basic collaborative working if you are having it at the same session and working together. I wanted to see if I can do this. If I click on this and then yes, you can basically click and then start working. Hey, you agree with this? And then push the comment. And then basically what I'm going to see in here is a similar comment that should show up. So basically you can see that it is coming up as a comment in here, and you can see that it is working, and then you can sound good. And it just works, and probably you can just close it. So it's done. You can see that there are some terminals that I shared basically. So basically people can work on that. There is a session chat you can work on, and then you can also access the terminal that you can work on. It seems that for terminal, you need to sign in. You cannot do anonymously because that's a security risk. So you need to make sure you have signed in, but then you can have access to the whole terminal and run commands as well. Okay. And then when you're done, you just click on this shared, and then you stop the collaboration session, and you're done. It is just, again, local, and nobody has access to it anymore. Okay, so one thing that probably we're done with our session today. Congrats for bearing with me on this like 5 extensions. But if you have the pro subscription through education, or you want to have a better understanding of how your repository is evolving, the GitLens is a very nice tool. It makes your commits visual and also gives you some control over commits and how the commits are progressing. So if you have a GitLens that the reason that it's not here because this is not a repository. This is not a Git repository. So if I initialize this, then it starts working and showing it on GitLens, and we can try that actually right now. Let's initialize this and make sure like first that we have everything that is okay. Yes, it is fine. So let's initialize this together, and then you can see that there will be a GitLens coming up. So there is a commit here. So we say initial commit after the presentation, ensure that there is. So we do the commit. So it shows it here as well, like what is added or not. But also, if you look at GitLens, it has MCPs and other stuff, but it can also show you what happened in here and how you can work on it. So if you want to publish the branch, there is no publishing because there is no remote. So for that, we make sure that we have a remote. Let's try and find a remote here. So here you do gh repo create, and it says, do you want to create a new repository from scratch? No, we do not. Create a new repository from a template or push an existing local repository? Sure. This current folder and a repository name. It's not a hands-on, so it is VS Code extensions hands-on. VS Code extension hands-on. And then it asks you, so I have a lot of these. So it asks which one you want, which organization. And I tell it to do with casual fibers. And then you make it public. And that's it. And if you want to add a remote so it can push, yes. And then would you like it to be called origin? Of course. And then do you want to push the commits? Yes, I want to push the commit. And you can see as soon as we create that, then GitLens comes up as well. It shows the commit graph inspection. So it shows what is added. At the same time, here GitLens it shows what is happened here. It shows that it is on our repository. And then it is also on the main branch. And then you can also reset, rebase, create a branch out of it, create a tag out of it, and inspect the details and patch and other stuff. So it is, I think it's a very neat and handy tool. And then you also can start working on an issue or create an issue or create a branch and work on an issue. I have GitLab as well. So it works on GitHub, GitLab, GitHub Enterprise, and many other version control systems as well. So it is I think it's a pretty nifty tool. Especially if you have access to the Pro version through GitHub Education, so you get the GitLens Pro as well. And I think with that, let's go over it. Again, you can see the inline blame, so what was added and when it was added. It gives you the visual timeline and the commit graphs. And if you have some branches, you can favorite them, you can switch within them much faster. Now you can actually work on some AI commits. You can ask ChatGPTs or Copilots to give you the commits and some summary of what you did through those commits. So it can be added to the commit message for later on if you want to basically go back and query that as well. So basically, this is an addition to what we had in the previous video on Git and GitHub. So basically how you can see how different people are contributing, who did change what and when, and how you can basically build up on that and then make sure that you have a comprehensive commit messages. So when you want to go back and inspect what happened before, you can do easily with just querying the commit messages. And that's about it. Just so you know, VS Code has a lot of more features. One of the things that is very, very interesting and important is that in VS Code, you can connect to servers that are much more powerful. For example, if you have a workstation in the lab or HPC or whatever that it is, basically you have the code or your data running on. So you can connect to that through many ways. You can connect through remote SSH, diff containers. GitHub also has some code spaces. So basically, it is virtual machines that are running on data centers. Then you can run your code on top of that. It is very good to sign in with your GitHub because then you can basically sync or link those tunnels, SSHs, and containers all together from remote machines, and then they can identify each other. And it is actually pretty neat. If you want to have and find extensions, you go to the extension bar and you browse and see what you want, and then make sure that you are looking at the ratings and reviews, and then make sure that it is the original one that you're downloading, because sometimes people just make a copy. Most of them are open source. So you fork it and then put it on the marketplace. So make sure that it is for you and the one that is being maintained. Also, each extension basically consumes some power, especially like when VS Code comes up, consumes some time to be loaded. So if you are not using something, just try to disable it or remove it. And that's very important. Extensions, usually good extensions are being updated. So usually you will see some notification in here that something needs attention or needs update. For example, for me, GitHub Classroom has a problem here. And the problem is that it is not being developed anymore. So it is actually by GitHub, but it is not being developed. So I always get this, but I want to use GitHub Classroom for now. So I'm still using it here. And make sure that basically, if you have extensions that you are using across machines, you can make sure that you have setting sync on. Setting sync is a feature in this one. Basically, it just tries to create a version, a a JSON version of the settings, the names of the extensions and settings of those extensions, plus the VS Code settings that you have, save it on your GitHub or Microsoft account. And then if you log in with the same account on a different machine or any other place, try to download it and install and make the relevant ones on that machine as well. Sometimes if you have a specific shortcut that uses control versus command, that's going to create a problem. But or if you have, for example, like MATLAB path that is different from one machine to the other, that's going to create a problem. So you can disable those, or you can basically make sure that you update those before using it. And thank you for your attention here. I really appreciate that. As a recap, we talked about Python and Jupyter and how you can create sections very like MATLAB and run sections one by one. We talked about how MATLAB extension is pretty nice, but at the same time doesn't give you the workspace and you cannot run section by section code, at least for now. I really hope that it comes very soon. The data Wrangler is a very nice addition that you can explore the data, find nans, and then export basically your changes to the data if you normalize or do anything, and then try and make sure that you can apply it for the rest of the data. I mentioned that LaTeX is one of my favorite extensions because it tries not only to correct the spelling, but also the grammar and how the sentences are looking. And this is very nice. Together with LaTeX Workshop, basically it gives you a full IDE plus a full grammar that Overleaf doesn't do, interestingly, and gives you the power to work on LaTeX reports and manuscripts and basically documents very seamlessly. And then with live share, you can also have the same sessions, like collaborative sessions with your coworkers and colleagues at the same time working on the documents. With GitLens as the bonus extension, you saw that like you can have a visualized contribution and then history. That is pretty nice. Try to install these extensions, try them out, and see if there are other extensions like for R, Julia, and other programming languages, or Fortran, for example, if there are Fortran people out there, and try to see what is good for them, what is good in them, and what is not still there implemented. If you have time, contribute to the extensions that are mostly open source, and then give me your specific or favorite extensions as well down in the comments. I really appreciate that. I will read it and then I will try it, especially if it is like useful for me as well. Thanks a lot. If you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to drop it below. Don't hesitate to check the previous videos that we had on Cursor and Git and GitHub. I'm going to talk more about agentic coding and Cloud Code, Cursor, Copilot in the next videos. Next would be the Mermaid flowcharts and other graphs that you can just easily write it in your Markdown and it will render very beautifully. Thanks a lot and have a great day.